The snow hadn't fully melted yet when this happened. I remember because I could see the gray slush along the curb through the window of the hair salon, and I remember thinking that March in Ontario never quite made up its mind about anything. I was sitting in Paulette's chair. She'd been cutting my hair for 11 years by then, and I was trying not to think about the appointment I had in 3 days. The notary's office. The papers waiting for me to sign. My son had arranged everything, he said. I just needed to show up and sign. I was 63 years old. I had a pension from 31 years with the school board. I had a small RRSP I hadn't touched. I had the house. That was it. That was everything I had built. Paulette was working the back of my hair with her comb when she stopped. Not gradually, not mid-sentence. She just stopped, and then I felt her hand close around my wrist, not hard, but firm, and she leaned down and spoke very quietly near my ear. "Don't move," she said. "Don't turn around. Just listen to me." I did not move. "The man in the waiting area," she said, barely above a whisper. "He came in 20 minutes ago. He said he was waiting for his wife, but his wife didn't come in with him, and he's been on the phone twice. He said your name both times." I felt something cold move through me that had nothing to do with the weather outside. "Are you sure?" I whispered back. "Lynette," she said. "That's my name, Lynette. I've been in this business for 26 years. I know when something is wrong." I looked straight ahead at my own reflection. My hands were resting on the arms of the chair, and I concentrated on keeping them still. "What does he look like?" She described him. Mid-40s, gray jacket, thin build. I didn't recognize the description, but that didn't mean anything. My son knew a lot of people I'd never met. I should tell you about my son. His name is Drew. Andrew on the birth certificate, but he's been Drew since he was 4 years old and corrected his nursery school teacher on the first day. He was always like that. Certain, sure of himself in a way that I used to think was confidence, and only later understood was something else. His father and I separated when Drew was 16. It was not a dramatic separation. There was no shouting, no other person involved. There was just a slow and honest acknowledgement that we had become two people who were polite to each other in the same house, and that this was not enough for either of us. We sold the house in Barrie, divided things fairly, and I took a position with the school board in Guelph. Drew chose to live with me. I thought that meant something. Maybe it did. Maybe it meant something different than I understood. He was a good student. He went to Western, studied business, graduated, got a job in commercial real estate. By his early 30s, he was doing well, or appeared to be. He wore nice shoes and drove a car I couldn't have afforded. And when he came for Thanksgiving, he always brought an expensive bottle of wine that neither of us particularly enjoyed. I was proud of him. That's the honest truth. I was proud in the way mothers get proud when they're not sure they should be, when they sense something slightly off but can't name it, and so they set the feeling aside and just feel proud. 3 years ago, he started visiting more often. At first, I thought it was just maturity. People said that happened. Sons who'd been distant in their 30s sometimes came back around when they hit 40. Drew was 41. He'd never married, though there had been women. He started calling every Sunday. He came down from Toronto some weekends and fixed things around the house, small things, the kind of things that had accumulated since his father and I sold the Barrie place and I'd moved into the smaller house on my own. It felt like being looked after. And I was 62, recently retired, and I will admit to you that being looked after felt good. He brought it up first in November. He'd found a retirement community, not a nursing home. He was very insistent about that distinction. A community, active people, 55 and up, just outside Orangeville, close enough that he could visit on weekends but in the country. Clean air. Walking trails. A dining room that did, I will say, look beautiful in the brochure. I told him I wasn't ready. He said he understood. He brought it up again in January. He'd spoken to the sales office. There was a unit available, a corner unit, 2 bedrooms, good light. There was a wait list, he said. If I didn't act now, I might lose the opportunity. I told him I'd think about it. He sat across from me at my kitchen table and he reached over and put his hand on mine and he said, "Mom, You've worked so hard your whole life. You deserve to be taken care of. I want you to understand something about that moment. I knew somewhere that it wasn't quite right. The words were right. The gesture was right. But something underneath wasn't right, and I felt it, and I chose not to examine it because it would have meant questioning my son. It would have meant looking at the feeling I'd been setting aside for years and finally picking it up and looking at it closely. I wasn't ready to do that yet. By February, he had arranged everything. The financial advisor was a man he knew from his real estate contacts. He came to the house once, well-dressed, professional, showed me documents and graphs. The plan, as I understood it, was this: sell the house, use the proceeds to pay the entry fee for the retirement community, and restructure my RRSP to fund the monthly fees going forward. He would manage the investments. Drew would be added to the accounts with power of attorney to make things easier for me. Looking at it written down like that, I can see it so clearly. At the time, I signed the preliminary forms and made an appointment with the notary. Back in Paulette's chair, I watched myself in the mirror and I did not turn around. "Is he still on his phone?" I asked. "He put it away," she said. "He's reading a magazine, or pretending to." "Paulette," I said, "I need you to do something for me and I need you to do it without making it obvious." She said she would try. "Go to the back room and call my daughter-in-law." I paused. "No, not her." I thought for a second. "Call my neighbor. Her name is Ruth." "I'll give you the number." Ruth Carmichael has lived next door to me for 9 years. She is 74 years old and she is not easily rattled. Her husband spent 30 years as an OPP officer and she absorbed something from all those years, a kind of stillness, a way of assessing situations without showing that she's assessing them. I gave Paulette the number from memory. Paulette put her scissors down, said something casual about getting more product from the back, and walked away. I sat and looked at my reflection. My hair was half-trimmed. I looked like something interrupted. I suppose I was. The man in the waiting area did not move, as far as I could tell. I didn't look at him directly. 15 minutes later, Paulette came back. She picked up her scissors. "She said to sit tight," Paulette told me, very quietly. "She said 20 minutes. I sat tight. It took 12. Ruth came in wearing her winter coat and her no-nonsense boots, and she glanced around the salon with that police wife calm, and then she caught my eye in the mirror and gave one small nod. She sat down in the waiting area. I don't know what the man in the gray jacket thought about the woman who sat down next to him. Maybe he thought nothing. Maybe he shifted. I heard the chair fabric move once. Paulette finished my haircut. I paid. Ruth walked out with me. We sat in her car. "Tell me," she said. I told her everything. All of it. November, January, the financial advisor, the power of attorney, the notary appointment in 3 days. I told her about the corner unit with good light and the brochure with the beautiful dining room. I told her about my son's hand over mine and the words that had sounded so right. Ruth listened. She did not interrupt. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. "Do you still have the documents the financial advisor gave you?" "I had them at home." "Okay," she said, "we're going to your house. I have a filing cabinet in my home office. I've always kept paper copies of important things, old habit from the school board years." I found the folder the financial advisor had left, and Ruth sat at my kitchen table and read through it. She read slowly and carefully. "I made tea." I didn't drink mine. "This company," she said, pointing to a letterhead. "Have you looked it up?" I hadn't. We looked it up together on my laptop. The address was listed as an office building in North York. The phone number went to a voicemail that had never been set up. The business registration number, when Ruth entered it into the Ontario registry, came back with a registration date of 8 months ago. 8 months. Drew had started visiting more often about 3 years ago. I sat there and I understood, for the first time, that my son had been planning this for quite some time. I want to be precise about what I felt in that moment. It wasn't disbelief. That surprised me. I would have expected disbelief. What I felt was more like recognition, like finally turning on a light in a room you'd been navigating in the dark for so long you'd forgotten you couldn't actually see. I had felt it, Every time. I had felt it, and I had set it aside. Ruth put her hand on my arm. "This doesn't have to be the end of the conversation," she said. "It's actually the beginning." She knew who to call. Of course she did. I will not walk you through every detail of what happened over the following weeks, because some of it is still difficult and some of it is not my story alone to tell, but I will tell you the important parts. Ruth contacted a former colleague of her husband's, retired OPP, now doing private consultation. He reviewed the documents and confirmed what she suspected. The company was not registered with FSHRA, the Financial Services Regulatory Authority of Ontario. The financial advisor was not licensed. The power of attorney form Drew had given me to sign was structured in a way that would have given him complete and unrestricted access to everything. The notary appointment was the closing move. Once I signed those papers, it would have been very difficult to undo. I did not keep the notary appointment. Instead, I called a real estate lawyer, someone Ruth recommended, not anyone Drew had suggested. I called my bank directly, without mentioning Drew, and asked about the accounts. I called Service Canada about my pension. I also called a family law mediator. Not because I wanted to punish my son, not at first, because part of me still needed someone to sit in a room with me and tell me I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't imagining it. Drew called 3 times in the 2 days before the notary appointment. The first call I let go to voicemail. He said he was just checking in. The second call I answered. He asked if I needed a ride to the appointment. I said I was handling it myself. There was a pause on his end, just a breath of silence. And something in that silence told me he understood that the plan had changed. He did not call a third time. I did not call him either. The formal complaint went through the RCMP Financial Crimes Unit and separately to the Law Society because it turned out the financial advisor had been impersonating a licensed advisor in at least 2 other cases. I was not the first. I was apparently the one with the neighbor who knew what questions to ask. Drew was interviewed. I do not know the full details of what was said because by then I had a lawyer of my own and she advised me to let the process work without my interference. What I know is that he was interviewed more than once. I know that the man in the gray jacket in Paulette's salon was connected to the operation. I know that he had been there watching to confirm I would keep the appointment. I know that my son knew he would be there. The legal process took time. These things always do, but the house is still mine. The RRSP was never touched. The power of attorney form was never signed and therefore never valid. What I lost is harder to quantify. I have thought a great deal about this, about the version of my son I raised, and the version of him that sat across my kitchen table with his hand on mine and said I deserved to be taken care of. I have wondered whether those are the same person or different ones. I have not arrived at a satisfying answer, and I'm not sure one exists. What I have arrived at is this. I was not foolish. I was trusting, which is different. I was a mother, which made me more trusting still. The people who do these things understand that. They rely on it. They find the softness and they press on it, and they keep pressing. And they count on the fact that you will keep setting aside what you feel, because the alternative is too painful to look at directly. I am looking at it directly now. Paulette still cuts my hair. Every 6 weeks, same chair, same window with the view of whatever the street is doing. Last winter, she showed me a photo of her granddaughter, just started kindergarten. I showed her a photo of the raised garden bed I built in the backyard this past summer, which took me 4 weekends and cost me 2 broken nails and 1 very satisfying afternoon. "You look good," Paulette told me the last time I was in. "I feel good," I said. And I meant it in a way I want to be careful to explain. Not cheerful, not wrapped up neatly, not the kind of good that comes from a story ending the way you wanted. More like the kind that comes from being 63 and still standing. From knowing that you felt it all along and that the feeling was right, and that one ordinary Tuesday afternoon in a hair salon, someone paid enough attention to notice. I had the investigator's final report printed and framed. Not the whole thing, just the cover page with the case number and the date. It's in my home office now, next to the filing cabinet. Ruth thinks this is funny. "Most people hang diplomas," she said. "I earned this one too," I told her. She didn't argue. I've thought about cause and effect a lot since all of this happened. Not in any dramatic way, just quietly, the way you think about things when you're doing dishes at 7 in the evening and the house is yours, and the silence feels like something you earned rather than something that was left behind. What Drew set in motion took time. That's the part people don't always understand about situations like this one. It wasn't a sudden thing, it was patient. It was built over visits and phone calls and a hand placed carefully over mine at the kitchen table. Every action he took produced something: trust, comfort, lowered guard, and he understood that. He understood the mechanics of it, and I think that's what I find hardest to sit with, even now. Not the betrayal itself, but the deliberateness of it. The fact that someone studied me, my habits, my loneliness after retirement, my particular need to believe my son had come back to me and used all of it. That's not something you get over quickly. I don't think you're supposed to. But here's what I've come to understand, and I mean this plainly, without dressing it up. What saved me was not luck. It was Paulette paying attention. It was Ruth knowing what questions to ask. It was the filing cabinet in my home office where I kept paper copies of everything. Old habit, school board years, small disciplines, small choices made over years. None of them dramatic. All of them, it turns out, essential. I think about that when I hear people say that wisdom just comes with age. It doesn't. Age gives you time. What you do with the time is the work. Paulette has been in that salon for 26 years, and she didn't develop her instincts by accident. Ruth spent 3 decades absorbing how careful observation actually works. I kept that filing cabinet because a supervisor told me in 1987 that paper doesn't crash, and I never forgot it. We had all, in our own ways, been building something without knowing we'd one day need it. That's what I'd want anyone to take from this. Not the dramatic part, not the man in the gray jacket or the notary appointment I didn't keep. The quieter part. The value of paying attention to what you feel, even when examining that feeling is painful. The value of a neighbor who has earned your trust over 9 years of small, ordinary interactions. The value of not dismissing the thing that doesn't quite sit right just because naming it would be uncomfortable. I was 63 years old and I had set aside a feeling over and over because I loved my son and I wanted the feeling to be wrong. That is not foolishness. That is what love does sometimes. But I'm glad, genuinely glad, that the day came when I stopped setting it aside. I'm glad Paulette noticed. I'm glad I gave her Ruth's number from memory. The house is still mine. The RSP was never touched, and I built a garden bed in the backyard last summer that took 4 weekends and was entirely, completely worth it. That's enough. More than enough.